Hey everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Gambling Care podcast. Today we are joined by Nicola, and I suppose, Nicola, to give you some sort of context for the chat that we're going to have with you, is that we have trawled the country looking for women in the situation that you find yourself in, and we probably have been rebuked at every corner, and it's so significant that you're sitting with us today and willing and able to tell your story. And first of all, I want to thank you for that. Can you give us a quick synopsis? It actually doesn't have to be quick. Can you just give us a synopsis maybe of your story, just to give us some sort of context as to why you happen to be sitting in that chair?
Why I'm sitting here? I suppose because I married a gambler is why I'm sitting here. I married, do you want me to go back to, I married in 93.
Yeah,
I married him in 93. Yeah. I suppose I was in recovery myself. I was only out of Ashery a year when I met him. And he was out of the Rutland Centre a year. So I suppose it started off with just being vulnerable after coming out of recovery, coming out of a treatment centre in early recovery, wanting somebody to love me, him wanting somebody to love him. And within a year we married each other. So yeah, it was quite quick.
Which is not highly recommended whenever you're just coming out of treatment, but you can't help when you fall in love, I suppose.
No. And and everybody was saying, oh, the bubble's going to burst, and then it was a case of, I'm going to prove all this wrong, that it is true and everything else. And I suppose what I felt was I was going to save him. I wasn't going to save myself. I was going to save him, and that was going to become my job, was to save him from whatever was coming for us. Because he went into the Rutland Centre in 91, 92, I think it was. For gambling. So he came out drinking because he was only in there for gambling. So I suppose he still continued drinking. I was in Ashery for alcohol. I was only 19 when I went into treatment. I had lived a very fulfilled life up till the age of 19. I suppose my drinking started when I was roughly about 11. And my own father was in recovery. He was in the Rutland Centre himself. And I suppose when he stopped drinking, I became the drinker because I couldn't cope living in a life where there was some type of normality being introduced. And I was like, oh, I'm done with this. Like, to a point that I was turning around and saying, he came home with these new things of, you're going to be grounded. And I was like, grounded? What does that mean? And he says, you're not allowed out. And I remember being up in the room and coming down and saying, would you not just give me the hiding and let me out? Because that's what I was used to. Just get the hiding and get on with it. So I suppose that's where my addiction started. I picked up from where my father left off. And then I got pregnant quite young. As I said, my own addiction was progressing quite fast at a young age. So I suppose because my parents had recovery in their life, they just felt it's time to ship her off. And I was losing my job as well at the same time. So anyway, that was that. And then, as I said, Alan was drinking when he came out of the Rutland Centre, which I didn't see a problem. I didn't even understand what gambling was even then. The only thing I ever knew about gambling was the Grand National. You were told to close your eyes, have a pen or a pin and pick a horse. And that was once every year that was done. And that's what you did. That was my only understanding of gambling. So I accepted Alan's drinking. I suppose his drinking was more binge drinking, which was probably kind of blindsided by, he'd probably go out drinking on a Friday and go missing for days, and he'd arrive back and full of apologies and everything else. But I didn't realise that he was gambling as well at the same time. As I said, I never knew what gambling, never knew what signs there would be for gambling or anything like it. So we were only a year married, and I was pregnant, and I knew there was something wrong, but I couldn't put my finger on it. Couldn't say where it was, and I ended up moving back home to my parents when I was pregnant. And even to the point that my dad said to me, but he's entitled to have a drink at the weekend, he's working. And I'm kind of going, but it's not drink. There's something isn't sitting with me. And then I convinced myself there was another woman. Convinced myself. And I said he was having it. Because there was secrets. The secrecy of, it wasn't, his stories weren't adding up to what he was telling me. It just wasn't, he wasn't coming in drunk. He wasn't coming in as if he was on drugs. He was coming in looking lost, looking like he was holding something back. He was there, but he wasn't present. He didn't care what was going on. He'd be happy every time I told him to leave. He was happy because it suited him for me to tell him to live. Then he'd go back to his mother's. And I suppose between me and his mother, we both laugh about it now because the two of us were his biggest enablers throughout the whole thing. Because I'd throw him out, she'd take him in, she'd put him out, I'd take him back. And this went on for a good couple of years. And when I thought he was having the affair, he agreed that he was having an affair to allow me to think that it was another woman instead of saying that he was gambling. So I suppose, fast forwarding a bit, he ended up going into Asherie. I remember going down with him for his, what was it they do again? The assessment, yeah. Initial interview. And the counsellor turned around and said to him, do you know what? He said, you're the most charming, manipulating man I've met in a long, long time. He said, you're just so sure of yourself. And I remember walking out there and going, what does he mean by that? Like, what am I missing? What can I not see in all of this? And then Alan went on and he completed his Asherie. He done it. He done about 6 months of aftercare and left. And then he said he could do this all on his own and he was the better man and everything else. And once again, we went off happy again. And then I was blindsided again. It's just like everything's running smooth and then all of a sudden it's just, I could nearly tell he was about to gamble before he gambled.
How?
I was just so in tune with him rather than being in tune with me.
So changing behaviour? Yeah,
totally. He'd become that charming, manipulating man before the gamble, making you believe you were the world, his kids were the world, everything was his world. And then all of a sudden it would be just gone. And I remember he always timed it very well. He always timed it as if there was a family occasion coming up. And especially in my family, if something was happening, he'd gamble or he would drink before an event because he'd go missing for days. And then rather than me tell my family that he has done it again, he'd come back and then I'd go off to this event playing Happy Families, that everything was perfect and everything was fine when inside I was dying inside.
When you talk about, how you enabled and how his mum enabled, were you enabling him, obviously emotionally, obviously giving him a house, a roof over his head? Were you enabling him financially as well at that time?
Yeah.
And when you look back now, do you think, well, I should have recognised that a little bit earlier?
Yeah. I blame myself a lot on what had happened. As you do, I suppose, because I was working. I went back to college at the age of 24, went back to college with 2 kids, working part-time and doing voluntary work to get into the field that I'm working in today, which is addiction, funny enough. And
You're well
And
qualified.
huh?
You're well qualified to work in that field.
Yeah, yeah.
days.
I didn't need a college degree. No, but and he used to use that against me. Every time he'd slip up, he'd always use that against me. But you can forgive. How can you not see that I'm struggling and you're in there working with all them addicts and you're able to? And I used to be totally confused by it and going, but I'm not living with them. They don't have an impact on my life. You have an impact on what you're doing to us. And I remember putting him out another time and his mother wouldn't take him back this time. And I left him, he slept at the back door in front of the kids. And the kids were going, Mammy, why won't you let Daddy in? And I'm saying, oh, don't mind him, he's only messing, I don't know why he's out there. And that impact on them, like they would talk about the times that their father was sleeping in the car or sleeping at the back door or different things that he'd done. I suppose.
Did you put him out because you couldn't live under those circumstances anymore, or did you put him out as in, this is his time? The only way I'm going to get him to come to his senses is...
Put him out.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it didn't, it didn't work. Putting him out every time, I suppose because I knew at times he was going back to his mother's and I knew where he was. So I didn't have to worry about. Sometimes he said, rather if he was locked up, I'd know where he was. I remember when he went into Asherie for the first time, that time for the 4 weeks. And it was the first time in years that I had slept because I didn't have to worry about where he was or what he was doing, or I could actually, I wasn't hiding my purse. Like, I mean, I'd go to bed with me money under my pillow. I'd go to bed with me money hid. Every time it got hid, handbags were hid, purses were hid, kids' communion money, confirmation money, whatever. Everything always had to be hid. And then it was like, when we were going to other people's homes, I'm sure people hid money or their purses when we would have arrived to their homes. And I remember my sister getting married and he went missing for the week before she got married. And I'd no money to buy a wedding outfit or to give her a wedding present. Sorry.
Okay, take your time.
And I remember that morning arriving to the house and she was stunning. And I'm trying to arrive with 2 kids that are going to be the page boy for her and trying to be happy and everything else. And inside I was just so broken, so broken. She said to me, where's Alan? And I just said, oh, he can't make it, he's not well. But they all knew that day. Before
we talk about just that event, can I go back and ask you about the month that your husband spent in Asherie? What was the feelings when he went in there as far as the bit of respite? Or can you explain to people the bit of respite that you were going to get as a result of that?
The respite that I felt was I could pay me bills. I could feed me kids.
It's just the practical things.
Yeah. I didn't have to worry about the kids upsetting him. I didn't have to worry about if I said the wrong thing, it was going to trigger something for him. I suppose triggers was a huge part of how I felt that we were to present to him.
Yeah.
About how we were to behave.
So you were walking on eggshells.
Totally. And we didn't have to do that. And then when I had to go down to confront him, I think that was worse. I think that sometimes to me is horrendous on... I don't think it's horrendous on the addict, to be honest with you. I think it's more horrendous on the person that has to do it. Because the resentment I had was, I'm walking out of there after revealing everything in front of other strangers, and I'm going home on my own, where he's getting minded and protected by counsellors and support, where you as a concerned person or a loved one going in telling your darkest secrets and you're left on your own is... it's not a very nice place.
I would find that very much a recurrent theme. I even know from thinking back to my own story that I remember family members saying to me after I come out, because when I come out, I did a 12-week program. And when I come out, I sort of walk back in. My hands weren't out as much as, I'm back. The prodigal son has returned. But I did feel, listen, I'm back. I've done me penance. And I remember family members saying to me, well, hold on a second, you're off to go on, you're off to get in the care. We've got nothing. Now, subsequent to that, they did go and get, they went to Gamanon and they went, to family support services. But did you feel a real resentment because of that?
Totally. And I remember actually ringing the counsellors and telling them that I was very resentful. I said, because I just lost it. And I just said, it's so, I'm trying not to curse here, but what I said, it's well for him being in there.
Yeah.
Yous have left me in this situation now of like driving 2.5 hours home and still worrying about, oh, did I do the right thing? Have I really upset him? Is he going to get it? But being left so vulnerable, so isolated, so lonely, so in my own thoughts, just, and no care for you, really, that you're expected to do this for your loved one. But what is that impact that has on family members? I think it needs to be looked at a little bit more of the impact of what you're doing.
Plus, did you feel you were carrying the can not just for yourself, but for obviously the kids and maybe his mum and family members?
Yeah.
And when he didn't turn up that day, and you had to go through the wedding all by yourself, where did that leave you? Did you at that stage did you say to yourself, right, well, that's it, that's the final straw, I'm better off without him? So how do you turn those feelings around to all of a sudden welcoming him back in, which I presume you did at that stage?
I became the stubborn bitch at that stage, and it was just like, I'll prove a point here, I don't need him in my life, and da. And I think he was gone for about 3 months at that stage. And the chairman man returned and talked me around again, and I forgave and I forgot. Did I forget? Probably not, because then I took total control of his wages. I took total control of paying the bills. I might as well have not been in a relationship. Do you know what I mean? It was just somebody else living in the house.
Babysitting.
Yeah. It was another child. It was more responsibility minded in him than it was the 2 kids. So I suppose this went on constantly, in and out, that cycle that they talk about, the wheel of change. I've been on it so many times. And then I'm a larger lady, but I was larger. And I remember a friend of mine saying to me, Nicola, you're killing yourself. And I said, what? And they said, you're killing yourself. And I said, I don't understand what you mean. And he said, look at you, from the girl that I met a long, long time ago to what you are now, he said, you're just absolutely killing yourself. And with that, I just broke down and I just said, I need help. So, although you're working in the field of addiction and everything else, you feel that you can't ask for that help. I felt I was a failure because I was asking for help from me and not for him. He got me in touch with a counsellor, and that's where my journey started. Was when I sat down in front of a counsellor for the first time in years, not to talk about him. It was to talk about me.
She switched the focus from him to you.
Yeah.
Was that the catalyst then for change in your life?
Yeah. I suppose I had done things myself in the marriage that I couldn't forgive myself for. And I think it comes to a point that you stop telling your family how bad it is.
Yeah.
Because their only answer is leave. Why can't you leave? Leave. Or then I used to be given ultimatums. It's him or us. Him or us. That's all that used to ever be said to me. So I just felt overwhelmed all the time, torn apart, all these voices in my head being dragged that way. I love him, but I love my family. I know what they're saying is right. I've kids. I don't want to let the kids see that I failed as a wife, failed as a mother.
Your own recovery must have been unbelievably strong to get through all that, because the first thing you'd think is you'd turn back to alcohol, and yet you didn't do that.
Because he became my addiction.
Right.
That's what, he became the addiction to me. That I was so invested in it. I've often thought about that. I sometimes even do say, I wonder, was I even ever an alcoholic? Was I just somebody that just drank too much looking for help in a different way? But I know today, sitting here, I would never take that drink to see. I've too much to lose. For me, I've too much to lose to ever see that.
Nicola, thanks so much for coming on, sharing your intimate story, and be under no illusions. I think I might have said it before we started, but be under no illusions the effect that this will have and the support, that people will feel whenever they feel, right, I'm actually not alone. And you've given lots of people lots of helpful hints as to the actions and the steps that need to be taken in order for you to find where you are today. And I'm glad that you're in such a good place, and thanks again for coming on. Really appreciate it.